Alright, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from Street Scores, and the Commanders got some draft rumors going around, some really interesting draft rumors. I'm hearing that we're higher on Kelee Ringo than some people think. I'm hearing some connections to offensive tackle Dawand Jones. I'm hearing some Hendon Hooker in the second round things. We got to dive into all of that and more, man. I'm really excited. Y'all know the draft is coming up. This is my favorite part of the NFL season, man. I'm a GM at heart. I'm a team builder. I mean, I'm all the way from high school recruiting to college, and all the way from college film sessions all the way up to the NFL to see how they do projections, mock drafts. I'm all of that type of stuff, so I'm really excited. And these draft rumors are very interesting, especially since we haven't heard us being connected to guys like Kelee Ringo in any way until these reports. We got to check to see how valid these reports may be, or are these just people trying to stir up rumors for clicks? We're going to cover all of that and more, but before we dive into all of that, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell next to the subscription button so you get a notification immediately, and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you pull up every Sunday for the Commanders Call In live show, especially this upcoming Sunday where it's going to be very draft heavy. I'm going to open up the phone lines for y'all to call in, give your opinions on everything, put us on to some prospects that you're interested in that you hope the Commanders get, and of course I'll probably be doing some mock drafts on the screen at the same time. All of that is going to be really fun, man. We may even look at some college football players' film while we're doing it. So make sure you pull up Sunday for that, and without further ado, let's get it. All right, let's start with the first report from Ben Standig, who's very close to the organization. He said, quote, "I think Washington would ideally like to trade back. And obviously it's all dependent on who's on the board, but I think trading would be something they would like to do." And now normally when you hear think and probably and should and maybe, things like that, you're like, okay, this is just somebody just saying stuff. But when it's like Ben Standig or like a John Com who's really close to the organization and talks directly to Ron Rivera and Martin Mayhew and those guys, that's where it's like, okay, maybe they're hearing something, you know? I mean, it's not like it's a full-blown report. Ron Rivera says that they want to trade back if they can. Of course, even if they want to, they're not just going to put that out there, because then that would just, if anything, that would only hurt our chances of getting the most value back in return for trading back if we do. We do not want that information out there until the very last second when we're trying to make those maneuvers happen in a little over a week. And of course, first of all, let me just get it out the way. I think it would be a good idea to trade back unless one of those top guys fall to us, like a Christian Gonzalez, Devon Witherspoon at corner, maybe like Broderick Jones. I'm a big fan of Darnell Wright. One of those guys falls at tackle, maybe an elite player at another position that we don't necessarily need as much. Other than that, I think it's time to trade back, man, because the guy you can get at 16 is probably going to be the same exact guy you can get later on, and even if it's not, it's probably a guy that's almost just as good, and if anything, you just add more picks in the draft to get even more really good players, because as we've seen, these third, fourth, and fifth round picks matter, man. Our starting quarterback this upcoming season is a fifth round pick. We've been striking gold in the third round the past few years. It's really that second round pick that's just like, all right, man, I don't know what we doing with that. First round picks are a little debatable. Second round picks are a little ugly, but them third round picks, man, we've been hitting. Antonio Gibson, Benjamin St-Juste, Terry McLaurin, Brian Robinson. Boy, them Commanders get scary. It gets spooky in that third round, man, I'm telling you. And then again, I already said it, but our starting quarterback this upcoming season that a lot of us have faith in and actually truly believe can be a really good quarterback, we got him in the fifth round. And I do believe we did not originally have that fifth round pick until we traded back and ended up getting Jahan Dotson. If we didn't trade back, I believe we wouldn't have Sam Howell right now. So trading back does matter. I think it's a really good idea. But just going back to the report itself, again, Ben Standig and John Com, and maybe even like JP Finley and them guys, they're so close to the organization that when they say, I think this is what they want to do, I'm hearing this is what they may be thinking about and things like that, you may want to keep an eye out for that. Don't take it as gospel. Don't assume that it will happen. But these guys have a good feel for what Rivera and Martin Mayhew, Chris Polian, Marty Herney, all of these guys are thinking and how they feel about certain things. So when they say something like that, take notice. And again, even just without this report, all logic to me says we're just going to end up trading back. I felt like last year, the draft that we got Jahan Dotson after trading back, I wanted to trade back less that year than this year. Last year, I was like, take Kyle Hamilton if he's there, take Jamison Williams if he's there. Both of those guys were there. I was like, you better take them. I was sick that we traded back, but it ended up working out really well for us in the long run. Not necessarily sure if it worked out better or worse, but at the end of the day, us trading back, getting Jahan Dotson in the first, and all of those other guys we ended up getting throughout the rest of the draft, that ended up working out very well for us. But again, I didn't even want to trade back going into that draft. This draft, I'm definitely willing to trade back going into it. And if the Commanders traded back last draft where I felt like it wasn't a good idea, this draft where I feel like it is a good idea, I feel like it's even more likely to happen. I'm not trying to say I'm out here being like Nostradamus or anything, but it just makes so much more sense to do it in this draft. Not just because of the pick that we have, not just because we like to trade back and we like to accumulate picks and that's just like a Rivera strategy or anything, but just simply because of the way that this draft is more than likely going to play out, because of the way that this draft class is set up. Cornerbacks, the difference between cornerback 4 and 5 to cornerback like 8 through 11, the one you can get with the 16th overall pick after Christian Gonzalez, Dawand, Witherspoon, and all of those guys are gone, is not much better than the guy that you can get later in the third, like a Julius Brents. At that point, if you miss out on Christian Gonzalez and Dawand Witherspoon and maybe some other guys that you may be interested in, you might as well just wait until the third round to get Julius Brents. Maybe even take them in the second round if you don't want to risk it. And then the tackles, I'm pretty sure just the way that positional value works, a lot of the top tackles that we really want probably won't even make it to us at 16. If they do, then maybe we pull the trigger, but I just don't really see it. Then linebacker, I don't really think anybody's worthy of going in the first round. The only like true first round talent that I really love and believe in is Deion Henley, honestly, in my opinion. You can make an argue for Trenton Simpson. Wide receiver, we don't need one that bad. Tight end, I love a lot of the tight ends. Darnell Washington, I would love to I would take him at 16, but I think you could honestly trade back and still end up getting them. I think that's very likely. So you can just see from every angle that trading back makes the most sense. And then also let one of them quarterbacks fall to us at 16. We're going to dangle that quarterback like you better come get him or we'll draft them. And that's just going to increase the value that we can get in return for a trade back. So man, I really hope somebody like Anthony Richardson or Will Levis makes it to 16, because we're going to end up strong arming somebody for some picks for them to trade up and get a quarterback. It's different when you trade up to get a quarterback versus any other position. That's different. Even if it's the same exact pick, even if you're, say, for example, going from the 23rd pick to the 16th overall pick, there's a difference in what you have to give up if the team that you're trading up with, us, the Commanders, knows that you're doing it for a quarterback. That's a real thing. So let one of them quarterbacks fall to us, boy. Oh yeah, we gonna feast on the draft that night. Next rumor is being reported that we're apparently interested in Kelee Ringo, Jordan Reed of the Draft Network, and I believe he now works with ESPN and everybody. I mean, he's everywhere. I mean, he's just one of them guys that's just going up and up and up in the draft world. Shouts out to him. Love his analysis. He said, quote, "I've heard that they are very high on Kelee Ringo of Georgia. Coming into the 2022 season, Ringo was viewed as a potential first round pick. A lot of us thought so as well, even me as a Georgia Bulldog fan, but he's likely to fall to round 2 now." So Jordan Reed said that about the Commanders. And if you think about it, I'm not going to sit here and dive into his weaknesses and strengths today, but I do think that at the end of the day, if you just make him a primarily zone coverage corner, which we love to run, and just use that athleticism and length, he doesn't have great change of direction skills like that, but you know, especially running like a cover 3 and things like that, like Jack Del Rio likes to run, I think Kelee Ringo could end up being a really good player. He has Pro Bowl potential, but there's a lot of inconsistencies to his game. And again, I mean, Georgia Bulldog fan, like, if anybody's rooting for him, is me, but you got to see the obvious weaknesses to his game, the things that you got to cover up with good defensive scheme. It's not like a Christian Gonzalez or Dawand Witherspoon. You put them on the field and you call pretty much any coverage, any type of defense you want to call, and they'll find a way to be productive. No, you will have to protect Kelee Ringo with the scheme, but if you put him in the right scheme, he could be a very explosive playmaker for you, like a risk taker, like a Marcus Peters type of thing, but more athletic. And don't sleep, man, because a lot of people love Kelee Ringo. Again, the Washington Commanders are reportedly very high on Kelee Ringo, and this is coming from NFL Rookie Watch. Many NFL scouts reportedly believe a position switch for Ringo is possible, while some believe he can excel at the cornerback position. So either way, with somebody with that much talent, 5-star for a reason, bring him in as a corner, safety, whatever you want to do, and again, mask his weaknesses with the scheme, and he can end up being a really good player for you. Also, a few weeks ago, Richard Sherman says he sees an early Patrick Peterson in Ringo. Now, you got to kind of take that with a grain of salt, because Richard Sherman does consider Kelee Ringo his protege and basically sees him as a clone of himself almost, but he also said that he sees a lot of early Patrick Peterson in Ringo, and that's very high praise. If Kelee Ringo ends up being a Patrick Peterson, whoever gets him potentially in the second round arguably got the steal of the draft. That's plain and simple. Now, again, as a Georgia Bulldog fan, even me loving him as much as I do, I don't even necessarily see Patrick Peterson just yet. Like I already said, you're going to have to protect him with the scheme. It's not like Christian Gonzalez and Dawand Witherspoon. You just plop them on the defense and ask them to do whatever. They're going to be productive. No, Kelee Ringo, you're going to have to call the right plays. You're going to have to call the right coverages. You're going to have to hide his weaknesses with the scheme. Jack Del Rio's going to have to do more work to make Kelee Ringo into a great player than he would with Christian Gonzalez, Dawand Witherspoon, and some of those other guys. But that athleticism, you can't teach that. You can't teach that length. If you can use him the right way, he's a Pro Bowl caliber player easily. So I think that's really interesting. And again, like I said in the intro, what's really crazy is I have not heard Kelee Ringo attached to the Commanders at all in any way up to this point. We haven't had any combine meetings with them, nothing. No private visits, no informal meetings even. Like no virtual meetings over Skype, whatever, like no attachment at all other than these reports that are coming out recently. But again, remember, I'm gonna keep saying it, Jahan Dotson took him in the first round last draft, and we had no attachments to him as well. None. We didn't hear any reports about us being interested in him. No meetings, no informal meetings, no formal meetings, no draft visits, no nothing. So that doesn't mean anything. So you never know, Kelee Ringo could be a guy. And then next up, the same Jordan Reed said, quote, Dawand Jones of Ohio State is a name I keep hearing in connection with the Commanders, which has done a lot of work on his evaluation. So that's really interesting, man. And now Dawand Jones, we are attached to him. We had a formal meeting with him at the Combine. We brought him in for a private visit all the way to Ashburn, and we went to the Ohio State Pro Day. And between him and Paris Johnson, those are probably the main reasons we went. Of course, they probably went to go look at CJ Stroud, but CJ Stroud is obviously out of our range. That's what we get for picking 16th overall. So those are 3 reference points of interest right there. The complete opposite of Kelee Ringo, where we haven't heard anything up to this point until these reports that are coming out now. Whereas Dawand Jones, the Commanders have made it obvious that they're at least somewhat interested in him. There have been 3 different reference points of interest right there, so I'm really excited about that. Now, he's a career right tackle. So what happens with Andrew Wiley if you take a Dawand Jones? Does Andrew Wiley move to left guard, I guess? But again, like I said in the previous video, the most recent time you've seen Andrew Wiley was him starting at right tackle against the Eagles, having the best blocking game of his life, his entire career. Why would you mess that up and pay him all of that, you know, somewhat tackle money just to move him to guard? So I think right tackle wouldn't make too much sense. Us drafting a left tackle, I can see that, and then you just release Charles Leno and put him back in that same loop that he was in a couple of years ago, because the Bears, before entering, what was it, the 2020 draft or something like that, saw Charles Leno as their starting left tackle. Then they happened to draft the left tackle that they didn't expect to fall to them when they got him, and then so they ended up cutting Charles Leno, and then we ended up getting Charles Leno after the draft, after the Bears cut him. Charles Leno can end up in that same exact cycle again. Us landing a tackle we didn't expect, and then us having to cut Charles Leno after the draft. We'll see. Who knows if that happens or not, but I just feel like left tackle makes more sense than right tackle. And I'm the type of guy that feels like Darnell Wright can play either one. And I feel like Darnell Wright is so good at right tackle. At that point, if you only see him as a right tackle, you just move somebody else somewhere else. You shuffle the line for a Darnell Wright, in my opinion. That's my guy. But Dawand Jones, I don't necessarily see it. But then again, if the Commanders love him as much as it seems like they do, then we'll see how that ends up going down. Maybe Dawand Jones, if you trade back, maybe you can get Kelee Ringo and Dawand Jones. Who knows? And then Hendon Hooker. I know we keep talking about him, especially on this channel, quite a bit, but it's something after another. And this time it's John Comm, the guy that you can argue is the closest to the organization out of all reporters. He's the Commanders representative for ESPN and all of that. He said, quote, the Commanders like Hendon Hooker of Tennessee, and if he's sitting there in the 2nd or 3rd round, I could see them drafting him. Again, it's a I could see them, it's a maybe, it's a I think type of thing. But again, just like Ben Standig, these guys are so close to the organization. When they say things like that, they're hearing something. It's not just their opinion alone, like, I like that player. It's more of a, this is how Ron Rivera and Martin Mayhew view things, so I could easily see them going this way just based off of how well I know them type of thing. So it's a little different. It's nothing to take set in stone, take as gospel or nothing like that, but it's definitely something that should catch your interest and take a mental note. But that's really interesting though. If he's sitting there in the second or third round, just like, I mean, remember Sam Howell, sorry for the camera mistake too, I don't know what that was, but remember Sam Howell, they said blatantly, like straight up, being brutally honest, we weren't even looking to draft this guy. We didn't even necessarily have him on our draft board for real, but when he was sitting there at the 5th round, they basically said he had to be best player available at that point. Why not take him? And now look at him, he's our starting quarterback for this upcoming season and potentially our franchise quarterback, and the only quarterback in the NFC East that isn't getting paid ridiculous amounts of money. So hey man, Super Bowl window. But again, the same logic for Hendon Hooker. They're more interested in Hendon Hooker this draft process than we ever were in Sam Howell the previous draft process. So I could definitely see a scenario where if he's sliding, I mean, he was a first round talent before he tore his ACL. If he makes it to the 3rd round, I can easily see the Commanders saying, forget everything else we had planned, let's just go ahead and take him right now, because there's no reason we should let this guy slide any further than he's sliding. And again, like I've already said, the logic from Eric Bieniemy's point is, I mean, he may like Sam Howell a lot. He may love what he saw in that Cowboys game, but at the end of the day, he didn't draft Sam Howell. He may want to bring in a Hendon Hooker that could potentially be better suited for the offense that he may want to run. I'm not saying that Hendon Hooker is a better fit than Sam Howell for the offense that Eric Bieniemy wants to run, but I can just see the logic there if Eric Bieniemy would want to attach himself more to that guy. But Hendon Hooker is really interesting because remember, he tore his ACL not very long ago, all the way back in November when he was running a Heisman race. I mean, I think he honestly would have won it. And remember, typically ACL injuries take 9 to 12 months to recover from, but he just said recently that he could be ready for training camp. And I'm like, there's no way. There's just no way. I'm sorry, Hendon Hooker. We didn't get to see you at your pro day because you've been hurt, nothing at the combine, and now you're saying that you should be ready for training camp. And even if you are ready for training camp, just looking at the QB landscape right now in the NFL, whatever team ends up taking him doesn't plan on starting him anyway, so maybe he can start to practice in training camp and start to learn the offense. Remember, Tennessee runs one of the most gimmicky offenses in college football, definitely out of the SEC, easily one of the most gimmicky, people always open, QB friendly, the exact opposite, the antithesis of a pro style offense. So he's going to be raw in that aspect, but if we're talking about mechanics and throwing motion and footwork and things like that, he has a pretty high floor there. You just got to get him to learn how to run a pro style offense. So it really doesn't matter whether he's recovered from his torn ACL by training camp or not, honestly, because he's not ready to run an NFL style of offense just yet anyway. But that's interesting because if he is able to practice in training camp, he'll be further ahead in his development than I previously thought. But either way, again, looking at the QB landscape, I don't even necessarily see a team where he could get drafted right now and end up starting unless there's a severe injury to some random quarterback. Because I think on our end, I think Sam Howell's going to ball out, and even if he doesn't, we have Jacoby Brissett to back him up. And then everybody else is either about to take a franchise quarterback high in this draft right now, like within the first 5 to 8 picks, or they already have a franchise quarterback or somebody that they potentially view could be a franchise quarterback. So I just don't really see where Hendon Hooker could get drafted right now and end up starting week 1 anyway. So it kind of doesn't matter, but it is still really interesting. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. All of these rumors, out of all of these players that were rumored to be attached to, who do you like the most? Who would you be willing to take the soonest? Kelee Ringo, Dawand Jones, or Hendon Hooker, and why? Also, who are some other players that you may have heard that were rumored to be attached to that I wasn't able to talk about today? Also, how do you feel about the trade back rumors and reports? Do you feel like the most logical move would be to trade back or to stay put at 16 and just take best player available, or take a position in need? And if it's a position in need that's your answer, what position is that? But yeah, man, I appreciate all the support, man. Again, like this video if you liked it, if you learned anything. Appreciate all the support, man. Shouts out to all of my sponsors, especially the name you see scrolling on the screen right now. I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm out.